What is going on, squad? Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite things to do in fitness: programming. For those newer to the squad, here's a little bit of background on me, and this goes right into the programming. My first fitness job, I used to work at Planet Fitness. While I wasn't supposed to do this on the clock, what I found myself being drawn to was taking little pieces of receipt paper and printer paper and writing down programs on it. And then I'd try and make it better, and I'd try and make it better. And then the next day I'd come and do it again. And then the next day I'd come and do it again. They'd be like, oh, this looks good. And throw it in the garbage. I was a nerd about programming. I love to program. I still love it to this day. So much so that every time I finish a new program for a client, before they even get it, I'm looking at them like, yeah. It's gonna get them results. If my clients could see me doing this, they'd probably be like, what the hell's wrong with this? Anyway, let's get into this. So programming our Isochain workouts is going to be the same in the beginning phase as any other workout program, whether it's dynamic or isometric or whatever. And that's, I need to know what the fitness goal is. If I have a client that's looking for weight loss, I know that compound exercises and a heavy emphasis on calorie deficit, a manageable one, and a manageable amount of cardio to begin with progressive overload in both the cardio and the strength training is going to be the key to that client getting results long term. Meanwhile, if we flip it over to having an athlete as a client, I know that I can skip a lot of the beginner stuff after the assessment, and we can go right into some of the intermediate and perhaps, depending on the situation, some advanced lifts. So once I figure out that goal, then I can properly program the Isochain workout. Now what's cool about it is whether it's a beginner or advanced, a strength program 9 times out of 10 will benefit that person. Now, you'll have an exception to the rule. Like right now, I have an exception to the rule that I'm training him online on his Isochain, and we have to go with sustained holds because any 6-second max contraction lifts will trigger an injury that he has. So I cannot do that for him. And working around injuries is something I'm really good at this point, as I've done it so many times already. Now, once we figure out the goal, the next step is to specify which Isochain mode to use. If we are working with a client who is primarily a beginner, I will more than likely have them on a strength training protocol of a 1x6, 3x6, or 6x6, depending on the situation. Why strength? Because I want them to focus on movement. Now, unless there is a pre-existing injury, I still want my clients to move. Unless they're an Isochain only client and they sought me out for Isochain only training, that's a different situation. But we're talking about someone coming through, looking for training, and they want to utilize the benefits of the Isochain in addition to everything else. That's what I'm referring to here. I'd have them go for strength. Why? Because increasing their strength, and remember, isometrics is the fastest way to develop strength. I'm not talking about size. It's the fastest way to develop strength. It's just going to make all of their weightlifting movements in the gym a lot easier, and their progressive overload a lot easier in the weight room. So we essentially are shaving months off the process of gains and body fat loss, which is huge for personal training, in order to get them results as soon as possible. The goal is always to get them results as soon as possible, the quickest way, but also the safest way. Don't cut any corners. On the flip, if we have an athlete, chances are I'll probably still have them do strength training because everybody could benefit with strength, and the fastest way to develop strength, which is the Isochain. But also, depending on what they do, for example, for a bodybuilder, I'd have them use the Isochain for burnout sets, or for a type of sport athlete, obviously we're going to do the 6x6, but they may need their muscles to last for a duration of time. So for example, what I think about right away are soccer players whose cardio levels are absolutely insane, all right, but their muscles also need to be able to, while yes, be able to fire quickly, but they also need to be able to last. So it's like, okay, well, that's great that your type 2 muscle fibers allowed you to get to that ball in time to kick it, but if you're only good for that one play and your muscle endurance is trash, that's a problem, and you are no longer an elite athlete. You are no longer an elite soccer player. We're gonna put them on the Isochain, and we're going to work on their belt squat or their calf raise and set it to 20 to 30%, and we're gonna have them hold that contraction for a minute to 2 minutes to increase their muscular endurance. Athletes in particular will love this. Why? Well, yes, of course you can just have them on weights. Obviously, having them on weights has always worked. But remember, athletes in particular are under a lot of wear and tear. They have to compete at high levels. Any dynamic movement can throw everything off. So we have to train as wisely as possible, and static training while still getting gains and still increasing strength or hypertrophy is going to be paramount to an athlete's success, but not only bulletproofing them, but also giving them the gains that they need to be successful. Not to cut out all the rest of their training. Remember, adding additional Isochain training to their protocol is only going to take an additional 5 to 10 minutes. When we are programming our Isochain workouts, we also want to factor in CNS fatigue, especially if you are active outside of the Isochain. Unless you are Isochain only, and you still got to be careful if you're Isochain only too, but if you are a hybrid lifter or you are active outside of your Isochain work, you have to be mindful of CNS fatigue and place your Isochain sessions strategically or alter the volume. So what I found after probably about 8 different Isochain programs in the last year is that my body responds incredibly well to 1x6s. That is the best form of Isochain work that my body responds well to. Did it respond well to the 3x6 and 6x6? It responded pretty good. But when combined with my other physical activities, the 1x6 netted me the most results in the quickest amount of time. But that may be different for others. That's why it's always important to grab an assessment. Personal trainers watching the channel, I'm talking to you right now, but y'all already know this. Next step, number 4, less is more. Now, I kind of alluded to that in the last point. Less is more if the client is already active. Now, if we're Isochain only, you can go ahead and skip this part. Let's say we are training a baseball player. They have to stay active, or they're not going to be able to hit or catch or run at the peak levels required for Major League Baseball. I'm just saying Major League, it could be the lower levels too, it doesn't really matter. But they still need an amount of elite physical activity in order to maintain status at that level, otherwise they're gonna be trash. If they start adding a whole bunch of 6x6s, if their workout regimen and training regimen for the sport are already at high levels, adding multiple 6x6s per workout, and what I mean by that is like 6x6 tricep extension, 6x6 shoulder press, 6x6 bicep curl. And if you guys have done 6x6, you know how freaking taxing that is, and the CNS will catch up later if you have all those other factors loaded on top of an intense program like that. You might be doing yourself a disservice. So remember, less is more, and maybe a 1 or perhaps 2x6 is best for that type of workload. So it's always important to monitor what else is that person doing. Case in point, I've had a client earlier this year who was responding really well to 3x6. But when we went to 6x6, although the climb was increasing, instead of like this, now it's kind of like this. Still going up because he was still getting benefits from the Isochain, but it wasn't as good. Why? Let me tell you. We were training 5 days a week dynamically already. So he is under immense physical activity workload already. Sometimes he was going a 6-day by himself. In addition to that, he was doing cardio 5 to 6 days a week. So you have, 5 hours of cardio. He was doing cardio for like 45 minutes to an hour per day. He was a machine, guys. That's why he lost a lot of weight and body fat. Huge workload in cardio alone. Our strength training sessions were about an hour with maybe a little bit of spillover in between. So that's about 6 hours of weightlifting, and then about 5 to 6 hours of cardio. That's 12 hours right there. Then I'm gonna tax him even more with the 6x6. So while we were going, his body was like, okay, man, that's enough. But with the 3x6, his body was like, all right, there's another thing added to the plate, but it's short, it's sweet, it's to the point, and we can still utilize all these gains without taxing the whole freaking system. Does that make sense? In his situation, less is more, so you have to be careful no matter what your goal is personally, or if you're working with somebody, you gotta watch their physical activity, because you don't want to be you don't want the Isochain to be the straw that broke the camel's back. You want it to be something that's beneficial in addition to what they're already doing. That's why sometimes less is more depending on the client. Or you. The 5th point, warm up, Isochain warm up, workout, cool down. That is the proper formula for for a very successful Isochain session. Now, is everyone gonna have time to do that? No. There's always an exception to the rule. What I've found is that I've been able to skip both the first and second if I already have the client doing cardio and strength training beforehand and we do the Isochain afterwards. However, if we're doing the Isochain first, I've found that the best results for training clients, and this is including myself, is to do the cardio first and then hop into the Isochain and then do the weightlifting. As you guys are probably starting to realize, programming with the Isochain has many variables, and this video is probably going to be the top with a whole bunch of subcategories which are definitely going to deserve their own video, because programming in and of itself is deep. It is not a one-size-fit-all type video. This video would be over 2 hours long, a minimum, if we talked about all the variables. So we will cover that in later videos, and this might even become its own playlist. It's how important proper Isochain programming is. This is my trainer coming out. What exercises? And that, again, another basic bird's eye view question of Isochain programming. Again, that depends on the client or you. Again, it could be personal. What protocol should they use? I'm not just talking 1x6, 3x6, 6x6. I'm not even just talking the modes on a hypertrophy. I'm talking about maybe rest times, how many days a week, should we switch it up next week based off the results this week. There's a lot of factors that go into this. I hate to keep giving the answer, it depends, but it really does. So let's give an example. Let's go back to that weight loss client, right? Total newbie in the gym, he's trying to lose 25, 30 pounds. What exercises? What's the protocol? What are the rest times? All that stuff. And let's assume she's already doing dynamic training and cardio as well. She's doing those outside of the Isochain training. How should we program her? Right off the bat, I would recommend a 3x6 for 4 exercises. They would be the row, the seated row on the floor, the deadlift, variation of squat, like the belt squat or the Austin squat, and the overhead press. Why? Because when we're talking about weight loss, the best ways to develop a lot of lean muscle mass quickly, which is going to lead to lower body fat percentages because we're hitting multiple muscle groups. Always train multi-joint for weight loss clients in the beginning before starting to go into accessory lifts to get those areas stronger. And so by performing a 3x6, 6-second contractions with a 20-second rest time in between, that'll probably take about 5 minutes, maybe 6 or 7 if you're BSing in between chain links. Those 4 exercises, utilize that 7 minutes along with the rest of their dynamic training and cardio. And that's a nice, super successful hour-long session for that weight loss client. So you got about 7, let's just say it's 7 minutes, let's just say it's 10. Just give 10, all right? And then if you're doing 30-minute sessions, that's 20 more minutes of dynamic training, and then have them do cardio for another 15 minutes. That is fantastic. That is a winner right there. As long as we're utilizing the time allotted to the utmost, that is a winning formula for utilizing the Isochain in addition to everything else. Again, Isochain only though, that is its own video in and of itself for Isochain training. I will absolutely make a video for that. This is just a broad topic right now. Program cycle. Let's talk program cycle. So we've talked about this on the channel before. 4 to 6 weeks, doesn't matter whether it's isometric or dynamic or whatever, you always want to cycle off the programs you're using because a combination is going to come up pretty quickly and your body's like, oh yeah, we're doing this again. Well, no need to grow. We get it, bro. You know what I mean? Like, we get. So you're going to hit a ceiling. So it's time to change some variables up. So how do you do that? You cycle the programs every 6 to 8 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. 6 is that nice number that I like. 4 is kind of dramatic in my opinion, but I like 6 to 8. 6 to 8 is what I usually do for my clients. 8 is that borderline where they start to get bored, so that's why I found that 6 is pretty good. But always keep the body in a state of progression. So the programs have to be cycled. How? I wasn't gonna leave that out. Again, what we talked about on the channel before. Adjusting the chain length, switching up the mode, adjusting the rep, adding another set, switching from single to double progression. That's a huge one right there. I'm not write that down. So let's go back to the weight loss client. Program cycle. This is simple. The first month with the new client, I would have her on 4, just to get her body used to everything. After that, I'd probably keep it to 6 because they need to be stimulated. They're gonna get bored. I get bored. You know, after 6 weeks, I'm like, dang, I'm still doing this program. Yo, I need something else. Whether you change just maybe 1 or 2 exercises throughout the entire thing, something has to be different. Last phase of programming out Isochain workouts. This is probably one of the most important parts. Optimize the Isochain workout that you come up with using the previous 7 points, the appropriate cardio and nutrition plan. Having trash cardio and having trash nutrition and having somebody performing weightlifting, I'm not even talking about Isochain right now, performing weightlifting, their numbers, their results are never going to be as good as if they do all 3. Never. I teach what's called the big 3 whenever I'm working with the client for the first time. The big 3 for No Limit Fitness are calorie control, cardio, and strength training. They're all 3 vital pieces of the puzzle, and by utilizing all 3, they all work together, and that's how you get those amazing weight loss success stories. Doesn't matter who you're training with or where you're training. The big 3 has to be utilized in some way, shape, or form to produce drastic, and I mean, holy crap, what has that person been doing type results. I'd like to switch over to an Isochain only example to finish out the video. So let's say we have an Isochain only, whether it's you or a client you're trying to train. Yes, their strength will increase by using the Isochain and programming them correctly. Again, if they're new, if they're just doing Isochain, probably have them do a Sweet 16 style and then get them up to like a 3x6 and 6x6 if they're Isochain only for their strength gains, and that's it. If they're a hybrid lifter in some way, shape, or form, you could still be a hybrid lifter and a newbie. If they are just using the Isochain and their cardio is trash and their nutrition is trash, they are only getting a third of what they could potentially get, and that's when after 30, 45 days they're gonna be like, oh, this product doesn't work, because they thought that they could utilize the Isochain as some miracle type product and start losing weight and inches and everything. And it's the same thing with lifting. You know, you're gonna lose the inches, but it's never gonna be to the point where if you had just done weightlifting, cardio, and nutrition, that you start to cut up and lose the weight and become a success story. It has to be all 3 of those. If we go back to the Isochain only person, by optimizing their cardio to perhaps, I'm just off the top of my head because this is what I like to do, prescribe 3 to 4 cardio sessions a week in addition to the Isochain training, in addition to adding a balanced nutrition baseline plan for them to follow, that's money right there. And then you will really start to see the Isochain in action to its utmost, and that's what it's all about right there. There will definitely be more videos on Isochain programming, this time in detail. This was the bird's eye view Isochain programming video. Stay tuned for the next one where I start to break it down into specific scenarios, writing it down in front of the camera so you guys can see it, because again, that's my thing. Writing programs is my thing, yo. And if you found some type of value in this video, please go ahead and drop a like, go ahead and comment. If you're not yet part of the No Limit Squad, hit the subscribe button. Come join the squad with us. We'll see you next video. Peace.